family. And before I get started too far down the road and hoping that one or two may be able to join us that we're waiting on, I did want to introduce Gabby. Gabby, I don't know if you are ready to come off camera. Where are you? There you are. So we are so happy. Gabby today actually is her first day starting a year-long detail with the OIE. She has been working in a different department, and I'm just going to give you a minute to introduce yourself, Gabby.
So my name is Gabby Buggy. I am living and working in Washington, D.C., but I come from Cincinnati, Kentucky, Tennessee, that whole Appalachia region area. And I'm really excited to be a part of the team. I've worked a little bit with some of the Navajo reservation while I was in college. So that's where some of my background comes from, but not much more than that. So I'm excited to learn and work with everybody.
We're just happy for you to be here. Thank you so much. Did you want to, let's see, kind of go around Sarah, can you just go by the order?
Yeah, I'll go by the order that everybody magically appears on my screen, which means that we'll start with Nadine. If you just want to share your name, your role, and your program, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nadine Eastman, and I'm the superintendent at a fairly small school in Northeast South Dakota, Enemy Swim Day School. We have an amazing school, and we've been doing a lot of embedding culture into everything we do, into content and into our school. So I'm also the project director. And so we're excited to be a grant recipient for sure.
We're very happy for you to be here. Thank you so much.
And that'll take us over to Kate.
Oh, hi. Marawek nananietsa Kate Piwinakit Briner. Oh, and my screen is dirty. I am the director of language planning and development for Comanche Nation. And I wrote the grant for our tribally authorized public charter school, Comanche Academy, which has approximately 60 students right now. We're so proud of them. It's our second year of operation, and we're, totally excited and honored to receive this funding to expand our curriculum and partner with the language department here and get things rolling for not just our students at the school, but also for Comanche kids everywhere.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
And then over to Kelly. And Kelly, if you're not in a place where you're able to unmute and share aloud, you're also welcome to do your introduction over in the chat box too.
Oh, can you hear me better?
Oh, yes. There you are.
Okay, I had to unmute myself. I'm Kelly Parker. I work for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes. My role with this grant is in finance and reporting compliance. And we are very excited for this grant because it'll help us develop our curriculum more in the Kootenai language. We already have the Salish language up and running in the school, and we felt that we needed to get our other language here up and going. So we're really excited.
Well, we are certainly happy to have you. And I know that we've had Salish Kootenai with some other previous grants. And so we're really happy to have you back and see what you're going to do with Native American language.
Well, I'm just 6 months into my position here, so I'm new over on this end. So I'm really excited.
That's okay. We have lots of resources, and we will be introducing our wonderful technical assistance team too, that are just exquisite in their service. So that's wonderful. So we're here if you need or have any questions at all. There is always an answer that can be found, and we will help you along the way.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, then that's everyone we have on right now. I think, hopefully our other two grantees will be popping in soon. But in the interest of time and making sure that all of you who made it a priority to be here on time get all your info, we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So welcome to your Native American Language Grant new grantee orientation. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And you'll get well accustomed to the fact that we start each webinar with our trusty disclaimer. All right, and now that you're officially disclaimed, we can hop right in. So today we're going to be talking a bit about the NAL program in general, introducing all of the new grantees and introducing you to our existing cohort of grantees, diving into your grant award notification, otherwise known as your GAN, and a bit about required reporting. We'll touch a little on fiscal management, but we'll really dive into that next week during your budget workshop. And then we'll also discuss communication and the available resources for technical assistance. But as we get started today, I'd like to introduce you to the Office of Indian Education's Director, Julian Guerrero Jr.
Thanks, Sarah. Hamaraoeka. Nananiat sa yani suara, so kanina na kimar, Washington ka na kanikata. Nanat namanat sa Kirchina, das Kozadna, das Coffeena, das Ihatina. My name is Julian Guerrero, and I serve as the Director of the Office of Indian Education and have just the incredible pleasure to work amongst some very respectable colleagues of mine, of which you've already been introduced to, both on the federal family side and the federal contractor side as well. And it's a pleasure to be with you all today. And first off, congratulations and welcome to this cohort of colleagues. And for some of you, I see some returning names. So welcome back. And for those of you who are new, welcome to the OIE family. I like to say that my greatest source of pride is how we consistently and continually dedicate ourselves to improving the way we do business. And we do this in ensuring grantee success at the forefront of our work. I typically like to say that our focus is to modernize and humanize the way we provide services to you, and ultimately that your success as a grantee is our success as an OIE. And particular to the purposes of Native American language reclamation and revitalization, our work to restore, reclaim, and usher new ways to support Native language learning at such a critical time is also meant to ensure that our futures as Native peoples are intact. And Native language learning is purely survivance in many cases. It requires persistence, not giving up. And I'm so excited at each of the projects that have been funded in this cohort to kind of look at what's all possible and what you plan to do. We are here to celebrate your milestones along the way and help usher you through the stressful moments of what it takes to administer a federal grant. And I like to also say that we take pride in building a culture of collaboration more than competition, albeit that you had to compete against one another to be a part of this cohort. You know, past that point, everything you should be viewing through the lens of how you can help piece one another together. I'm convinced that the only way that we can ensure the survivance and the reclamation of Native languages across Indian country is to lean on one another and piece each other together, as we are all missing pieces in our work. So I want to, in this effort to continue our work, we need to aspire to great things, of which is ensuring our Native youth are surrounded and that they can hear their Native languages. Language learning is healing, and it nurtures so much power inside every word that is spoken. And I'm really encouraged by getting to see and getting to meet this cohort. And I look forward to hearing all the celebrations you'll have, and of course, welcoming so much more to come in the future. So thank you so much for taking the time out of today to be with us. And I'll leave it right there. Back to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julian. Well, then it only seems right to now introduce the rest of the OIE team. So you've already met Dr. Donna Savis-Burns, who is both the discretionary group lead and your interim program officer. You met Gabby, who is the newest addition to the department, but there are also 3 other members of the discretionary grant team. You have Donna Bussell, who's the program officer for the NYCP program, as well as the interim program officer for the STEP program. Then you have Bianca Williams, who is the program officer for the ACE program, an interim for the ARP-AIR program, and Angela Hernandez, who is the program officer for the professional development grant program. As well as on the other side of OIE are the formula grant funds, led by Dr. Crystal Moore and her team of Annabelle, Terry, Wanda, and Greg. So you can see there's an array of folks working behind the scenes at OIE to be able to support all of the grantees all across the nation. In addition to that, you also have your technical assistance team that is always here to help and support you in your work with your grant. On with us today, we have Kathleen, who's the project director for the team, myself, Sarah Brightwell, who leads the technical assistance work. We also have Olani Lillian, who is one of our technical assistance coaches. You may interact also with some of our other members, Miranda, who leads our needs assessment work. The other Sarah, sometimes you'll see emails coming from the other Sarah, just, lots of Sarahs to keep you on your toes. She often is doing a lot of the logistics coordinating. And then Marissa and Patty, who are other TA coaches on our team. And now I'll turn it back over to Donna to welcome you and kick us off.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah and team. We do like to introduce the entire OIE team, both for discretionary and formula, because we do work as a family. And you will often see others from our office pop on to help. If you notice with the org chart, we are all kind of doubling up duties. We've had some wonderful funds come our way, which is what led us to this particular competition for the NAL and a couple of other. We were able to add additional of our demonstration grants and our STEP grant and more wonderful things. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to expand our vacancies there yet. However, we are working on it. And so you'll see us wear double hats. So I am standing in as the interim, and I will be working alongside Gabby, who will be helping with your program in particular. So you'll see her quite a bit. And so I just wanted to say thank you again for being here. And at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute. We do have a lot of information we'll be sharing with you today. So please feel free to either pop it in the chat. They'll be monitoring that at any time that you need or have some clarifications or anything that you find pop up as we go through the presentation. Okay, great. All righty, let's get started. Knowledge Ed. Okay, so when we talk just these next few slides, we're going to be reviewing just kind of the overall picture of and the purpose of the Native American Language Program, which many of you are probably very, very familiar with, especially if you wrote your application. You probably have it memorized. But if you're fairly new to your position, by any chance to go over some of these things that we kind of assume that everybody may know, but they may not know, it's, like I said, especially if you're new. So just to go over the purpose of this program. And essentially it's to take a Native American and Alaskan Native languages and teach them as the primary language of instruction. We hope to maintain and protect, promote the rights and freedom of our Native Indigenous people to practice and maintain and revitalize their languages as envisioned of the Native American Language Act of 1990. And of course, the overall goal for this is to support everyone to improve educational opportunities and student outcomes within Native American and Alaska Native communities. So the purpose of that is quite broad. However, we are able to do that with the language programs that you have signed on to do. And in the future, you'll be hearing some more about some interactions with our other current NAL grantees in the future, which is kind of exciting. But we, again, thank you for the work that you are doing and going to do out there in the field. Kind of going to the next slide, we talk about the absolute priorities to which the grant is funded. So the applications had to speak to one or two of these. Either you're developing and maintaining a new Native American language program, which two of our people, we have Navajo Prep and the Shoshone Paiute tribes are doing that. And then the majority, as you see with priority 2, expanding and improving the existing Native American language programs. And then you can see those grantees who wrote to and are engaging in absolute priority 2.
We're not on the list, but we're on priority 2.
Which one?
Priority 2, but we're not on the list. Enemy swim.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I couldn't see who was talking. Okay, we will. Thank you for that. We will. Okay, we will get that taken care of. Sorry about that. All right, and we're talking about competitive preference priorities. With this particular grant competition, it was wonderful to see the large number who, I think all of you had some kind of competitive preference priority with your grant application. And we looked at priority 1, how to support project sustainability in Title VI with formula grant funds. And priority 2 was to preference, it was of course a preference for Indian applicants. And this was either by the eligible entity as a Native tribe, Indian organization, BIE funded school, or one of the tribal college universities or consortium of these. So those are the 2 priorities for extra competitive preference points, and all of which of you, I believe, received one of or both of those with your application. We have current awards with our 2020 cohort. They are entering into their 3rd and final year of their grant. We have 11 of those. And of course, we are adding the new grant awards with you, with the total dollar that we just funded with the 5 was 1.2 million, a little bit more than $1,200,000, which was able to fund these 5 programs. We received these as a congressional appropriation funds last March-ish. And we're saying, hey, here's some money, let's do a new NAL competition. And so we scurried to make sure it happened within the time frame it did. And we are very happy that it worked out okay. It was a quick turnaround, but it worked. So it was a joy. I participated along with my coworker, Angela, and we were the ones who did the competitive peer review. And we were able to go through all of the applications and screening. So it was a joy to see your program funded, and look forward to hearing some great things and seeing great things. Okay, next. All right, now getting into the next one. Sorry, this is the next cohort. This is the 2020 you get to see here all at once. These are the 11 grants awarded. And then the next slide. These are the 5. You will be referred often to, you may see it, FY22 cohort. That's the cohort, of course, to the fiscal year to which you were granted funds. So you may hear that term, the FY22 cohort, and that is you. Next slide. And this is a wonderful picture to show how our grants are dispersed. And it's wonderful to see the vastness of how it goes from to in Alaska, and it really is well represented across the region, which is one of the goals that we serve when we have these competitions. So we are very well represented across the country. And if you're interested to know the instructional language, the grade levels, and the state to which you have this here as well, the list broken down into cohorts. And again, you will be able to meet them virtually soon. We'll get to that at the end. But you can see down in that way, when you're getting ready to maybe potentially network, you have that available to you. Okay, next. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to go over this wonderful part.
I get the really fun part. So we're going to talk about your grant award notification, otherwise known as your GAN. If you're thinking, I don't know what that is, don't worry. We will tell you where to find it, what it is. You can locate your grant award notification in G5. Now, here's the one little caveat to that. Only your project director of record can access that. So if you're not the project director, you will have to ask the project director to get that for you. But they can pull that down out of G5. I suggest pulling it down and saving it anyway each year, because this is the official notification that you've been awarded these funds, and it has a lot of really important information in it. And you'll get a new one anytime anything important changes, but always you'll get a new one each new fiscal year. So the beginning of each, right before the start of each fiscal year, you'll get a new one. So as you look inside that GAN, we're going to kind of break down all of it, because if you just casually glance at it, you may think, oh, that's just a bunch of legalese. And just like you do when you're buying a new app on your phone, you kind of scroll through all the legalese to get to the checkbox. It's like, oh yeah, I read it, just download. Well, you don't want to do that with your GAN. You actually want to read all of this, because it does have some really important things that, one, you want to make sure are correct. And two, you want to make sure there aren't things you need to follow up on, because sometimes the things in the GAN are things that you have to respond to. So as you're looking at that very first spot, block 1 is going to have your name. That's the official way that you're written in as a grantee. Often it does not necessarily match with how you casually refer to yourself. It's often a more formal version of your organization title, but it's good to know because that is your official grantee name, and that's how we'll typically send things to you. It'll also have your contact information there. Make sure that's correct. Make sure there's not any typos, that there's not any whoopsies in that. Okay, because again, that's where if something is mailed to your grant, that's where it goes. Then you head over to block 2, this area. This gives you your PR award number, which is super important because that's how we're going to identify you for the rest of your grant. Every time you submit a report, every time you submit a document, we're always going to have you put your PR number on it. The reason for that is we sometimes have grantees with similar grant names, or you as a grantee may have multiple OIE grants, but the PR award number specifically denotes who the grantee is and which grant they have. And you can kind of even see how it's broken down. So you got this S299B, the 22 is your fiscal year, and then the 000XX is the specific number that identifies you. So it's really important that you and your entire team know what your PR number is, because you're going to be using it on so many different things. You can then see your action number. This is your first GAN, so it's action number 1. If you have, say, a project director change, often the one that's written into the grant is not the one that's actually going to be doing that role once you get going. So maybe you have that change and you get a new GAN. Well, then that becomes action number 2. Or the next year, it just adds up each time that you get a new one. Action type is new because you're a new grantee, so this is a brand new GAN. And award type is discretionary because you did compete for these funds. Then we have block 3. This is project staff, basically your project director. So you'll have your project director's name, first name, last name, their contact phone number, and their email address. Again, make sure this information is correct. Your project director is the primary point of contact for your grant. When OIE reaches out, this is who they're reaching out to. So if that information isn't correct, they could be sending really important information to someone who isn't with your organization anymore or just isn't involved with this grant anymore. So you really want to make sure that's always correct and up to date. And we'll cover right after this how to change that if it needs to be changed. The other thing to know is that that point of contact is who should be reaching out to OIE if you need something for your grant, if you have questions, because again, this is your primary point person for this Native American language grant. Then you'll also see your education program contact, which is your program officer, which right now is Donna Savis Burns and her email. And then information for G5 to be able to get in contact with them, since that's how you're able to access your money. You then have your project title. This is taken directly from your application. So when you're looking at your application, whatever project title you wrote into your application is going to be reflected there. And then finally, block 5 is your key personnel. Typically, this is just your project director, but if you wrote any other key personnel into your grant, they would be listed there. Like I said, I think most of you are just going to be typically seeing your project director there. And you'll notice the level of effort. The level of effort also needs to be checked. So this is what percentage of your project director's time is going to be spent dedicated to the NAL grant. So in this example, it's 75% of their time, and then 25% of their time is going to be spent on something else. The important things to know are, 1, just to make sure that it's correct, whatever that percentage might be. And 2, if you have multiple OIE grants, the level of effort of someone cannot be more than 100. So if you had 3 different OIE grants and you said you're going to be 50% on each one, that doesn't really work out. That totals up to 150%, and you may be putting in 150% effort, but unfortunately your level of effort can only total to 100. So you may have to make some adjustments across those grant projects to make sure that you don't total more than 100%. Now, as Donna said, as we're going through any of this, if you have questions, feel free to unmute and just interrupt with a question or pop it in the chat. Now, like I said, all communications from OIE are going to go only to the project director or the authorized representative. We may see in some instances where you have your project director, but the person who's doing a lot of the running of the project is maybe a program manager or an instructional leader, and that's fine. But know that whoever the project director is the only person that OIE is going to reach out to, and the only person they can reach out to. So if you as the program manager are reaching out to Donna with a question, she's going to ask you to have your project director submit that. Now, they can include you on the email. It can be a big old group email with the whole team included, but it's going to have to come from the project director because that is who OIE has to do their communication with. Now, if you want to change that, it's a pretty easy change. There's some specific information that you're going to email to Donna, and she can change your project director. So what you would need to do is decide who that new project director is going to be that still meets the qualifications and that is an employee. It can't be a contractor. It does have to be an employee of the entity that received the grant. And you're going to get a piece of letterhead for your organization and write up a letter stating, we are changing the project director to whomever. That letter is going to have to be signed by your authorized representative, which is often either your superintendent or your tribal chairperson or your CEO. It's typically someone in that leadership role. If you're not sure who it is, ask us and we can always help you figure out who your authorized representative is that needs to sign that letter. And in it, for whoever the new project director is, you'll need to give us their name, their contact information, so things like address, phone, if you still have a fax, email, and their level of effort. So what percentage are they going to work on this particular project? And then you'll also need to include their resume and the date that you're making that switch. So as of what date do you want them to be the project director? You'll email that letter and their resume into Donna, and then she'll make the change and email you back that it's been updated. Only once you get that email back has it been updated. So make sure you get that last little step in there. Now, if there are other members of your team, though, that you want receiving technical assistance communications, you can add your other team members on for that. So those are the emails that come out from the technical assistance team when we send out calendar invites to things like this event or talking circles or other webinars. Any of those things, the OIE newsletter, you can invite as many people from your team as you want to be on that. And we really encourage you to include as many people from your team as possible, because the more people that are involved in those conversations and that have access to those resources, the stronger it will make your program. So you can share their name, their role, and their email address with us, and we can get them added. Now, to make that a little bit easier for you, I actually made a little poll this time that'll pop up on your screen. So if there are other people on your team that you would like to have getting those technical assistance emails and calendar invites, the newsletter, you can just pop it into the poll that just popped up on your screen. I will get them all added and they'll start getting the communications as well. But just to kind of really drive home, the communications from OIE that are the official Department of Ed communications will go to your project director, and then the technical assistance communications will go to the larger team.
Okay,
All right.
I have a question. This is
Yeah.
Nadine Eastman. This is
Sure.
my business manager beside me, and
Yes.
we had a hard time finding it because she usually draws down all our stuff from Department of Ed in the G5. Is that what it's called? G5
Yeah.
system. But just like you said earlier, I had to log in and
Yeah.
to get that GAN. But she's the one that actually draws down the funds.
Yes.
So what do we need to make her in this system so she can draw down funds for us? Because I don't
Yeah.
have access to our banking stuff,
Nor do you want to.
nor do I want to. You're right about
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So that is the most common setup, is that the project director does not have access to the fiscal side and does not want access to the fiscal side. That's something that your budget office handles because they know how to do all that. They're the experts in that area. So what you'll need to do is just reach out to the G5 help desk, and we can even provide you with the number for them, and just to have them add the access for her to be able to make those drawdowns. So it doesn't change who your project director contact is. That's still going to be you, Nadine. But for making the drawdowns, which is kind of a separate piece, you can merely contact the help desk and give them that PR award number and let them know to add access to that one. Sometimes they will require that the authorized representative sign off on it. Sometimes it just depends on who you get at the help desk that day. And they'll be able to get you set up to be able to start doing drawdowns for that project.
Okay, I think we're okay then because she says she can see money now, and we did talk to the
perfect.
help desk already. It's just that she can't
Yeah.
see the GAN, but you guys said only I can see it, or what?
Correct.
I think we're okay then. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Answering.
Yeah. All right, and then you'll notice in the chat that Donna also mentioned that when you're emailing Donna, if you could make sure and copy Gabby, and her email address is there, gabriella.bug@ed.gov. And that's just going to ensure that you get the most rapid answer possible. All right. I think we've gotten everybody responded to the poll here with any contact info that you wanted to share. If you decide later you want to add more people, it's never too late to add people. You can always just email those in to us and we'll get them added. All right, so let's move to the next chunk of your GAN. Block 6 is going to show your award periods. Your grant started October 1st and your grant year ends September 30th. You have a 5-year grant project, so it will completely end September 30th, 2027. And in block 6, you'll be able to see what your award is for each year of your grant. For many of you, that may be the same each and every year. For some of you, depending upon how you wrote your grant and your grant budget, it may vary slightly year to year. But that way you'll be able to see exactly what that is. And make sure and check that, because sometimes there may have been certain components of the grant budget that you asked for in your proposal that were not approvable. And therefore you may have been awarded a slightly different amount than what you requested. And so you want to make sure that you're truly aware of exactly how much you've been awarded before you start determining your budget for the year. You also want to look at block 7, which again is just going to indicate how much you're getting for this budget period. Okay, and so you'll see this action and budget period, those should typically match. And then performance period is how much grand total you're going to get across the 5 years. So like I said, just double check that information. And if you have any questions, if you're thinking, well, I applied for $200,000 a year, but I only see 175, what wasn't approved? You can always reach out and ask that. And Donna, I know will probably be covering that with you as she meets with you in the coming weeks as well.
That's right, Sarah. And I will be reaching out to schedule what we call post-award conferences, and we will go over anything and everything you have to that you may need and more.
Yeah. And that takes us to block 8. So block 8, at first glance, kind of just looks like a bunch of gibberish because it's a lot of letters and numbers. So we'll break down what all those letters and numbers are. The first one being where it says your UEI or SSN. So yours is going to be a UEI, which is your unique entity identifier. And it's going to be 12 characters that are alphanumeric, so letters or numbers, that is used to track how federal money is allocated. So this uniquely identifies to your organization and would be used on any federal grant that you've received. Then you've got this regulations, and you'll see EDGAR as applicable and 2 CFR as applicable. EDGAR is the Education Department General Administrative Regulations, and 2 CFR includes the Uniform Guidance for Federal Awards. These are basically regulations around what are allowable expenditures for your project. And you'll see that we often reference them when we're talking about your budget. So when we have that budget workshop next week, you'll see us reference them repeatedly because they're a great spot for you to go back and check. If you're trying to figure out, am I allowed to spend money on this? Is this something I could potentially do with my budget? Always go back and check in EDGAR and 2 CFR. Then you have attachments. Now, attachments may vary grantee to grantee depending upon the different things that are applicable to your project, but a couple of ones to be on the lookout for are attachment 4 regarding your indirect cost rate. Often by the time you're awarded, the indirect cost rate paperwork that you provided with your application has expired. And so this is a very common one for grantees to have, where you need to turn in updated indirect cost rate paperwork, typically your indirect cost rate letter. Because if you don't have an in-date, non-expired indirect cost rate on file with the department, you cannot claim and draw down indirect costs. So super important to have that on file. Attachment 7 is regarding any adjustments in funding amounts. So if you got awarded a different amount than what you proposed, you'll often have attachment 7. And finally, multiple OIE grants. If you have other Office of Indian Ed grants, which I know a couple of you do, then you'll be asked to create a plan for ensuring that funds for one grant are not used to pay for activities approved under another grant. So for instance, if you also have an NYCP grant, they just need a simple plan explaining how you're going to make sure that your NAL money is spent on only NAL activities and your NYCP funds are only spent on NYCP activities. This does not have to be some 90-page intricate document. Just simply lay out how you're going to keep those funds separate and apart. That's a great thing to also work with your budget office on, because typically they already have a lot of that in place. We will head over to block 9. This is your legislative and fiscal data. It's another one that has a lot of words, but basically the authority is just how you were able to have this grant exist, which it was part of ESSA, the program title, which is this whole long title that boils down to the Native American Language Program. You've got the sub-program number, which honestly you will rarely use for anything. And then the more important part, you'll have your funding amount again right here. So just making sure that all matches throughout. Then you're going to have block 10, which are your terms and conditions. So this is going to be any grant conditions associated with your award. So if there are any conditions that have been placed on your award, this is where you'll be able to see that. And it could be things like quarterly reporting, or they may have some audit requirements for you, different things like that. Just check and make sure what's in block 10 and if there's anything that you need to do based on what's there. Often you'll see this more in some of your out years. Now, to touch back, if you do have multiple OIE discretionary grants, then that plan that you're going to create is due no later than November 22nd, 2022. Okay, November 22nd, 2022. And again, it's just stipulating that you're going to keep those NAL funds separate and how you're going to keep the funds and the activities separate. If you have questions about that or need any assistance in putting that together, just reach out and we can always help with that as well. If you have an indirect cost rate that needs to be updated, that paperwork is due by December 30th. If you already have it though, send it in and get it off your to-do list. But at the latest, it's due by the end of the calendar year, December 30th. And then all of you, every one of you, all 5 of you have a budget revision due for year 1. Okay, and we'll be really diving into how you'll do that budget revision, tools, what you need to complete, how, when you turn it in, all of that on Monday or next Tuesday during your budget workshop. Okay, but just know that it's due November 17th. So you have about a month to complete it, but we'll dive into all the details of that next week. Do we need to do anything else if we are using the de minimis rate for IDC? So I would encourage you just to reach out and make sure that you will be able to continue using the de minimis rate, because there are some restrictions around using that long term. So you may just want to touch base and make sure that that is something you're able to continue using. Yeah. All right, and then a few other just resources for you. Remember, we talked about the legislation and the regulations. Those are also listed on the OIE website for easy access whenever you might need them, as well as a link to Edgar and to CFR, which provide you with all those great cost principles. Your GAN that we just walked through is another really helpful resource because it's got a lot of your important information all in one spot. And then finally, really your most important tool is your approved application. I like to think of your approved application as your contract with OIE, because you're going to be held to doing what you said you were going to do and how you said you were going to do it in that application, because that's what you were awarded on. So anytime that you're wondering, is this an activity I can do? Is this something I'm supposed to be working on? That's a great place to start, is to go back to that approved application and what you said you were going to be doing. If you have not read that application cover to cover, now's the time to do that. And I know sometimes, you know, our proposals are written by grant writers or by other people within our organization. And so maybe you've read part of it, but not every bit. This is the time to sit down and read every bit of it. I also encourage you, you know, get some sticky notes, get some highlighters, mark those things that maybe you have questions about or that seem unclear to you, and get those things clarified, whether it's something you need to clarify within your own organization, reaching out to people on your team, or whether it's things that you need to reach out to OIE about and get clarified on this end. You know, take the time to really look at all of that now and set yourself up for success with implementation of your grant. A few other links, and we'll also send you this slide deck with clickable links. I know Alani's posting them in the chat, but if you're having trouble keeping up with all of those, just know we'll send you this as well, and it has clickable links in the deck. But we do have some ed training resources, particularly around uniform guidance, that are really helpful. A link directly to the uniform guidance, and then the CFO.gov training modules. They have some really good grant training, particularly if maybe you're new to managing federal grants. They have some really helpful resources there. All right, let's move into our next topic of reporting. And I think this is when Donna's going to take over this next chunk.
Yes, give Sarah a break. Grab some water. That was a lot. Yes, reporting requirement. Fun. As with any federal funds, there's usually a reporting component to this that accompany the grant, and this is no exception. You will be responsible for submitting what we call annual performance reports, or otherwise known as APRs. Some of you may have heard that term before. And don't worry, let me put your mind at ease that if you don't know anything or not a lot about APRs, your technical assistance team will be providing all kinds of webinars and tools to help make sure you're able to complete that as best to your ability. They will be specific to your reporting guidance, and we have a YouTube channel that Sarah, you'll be very familiar with by the time you get into your grant. But we do have, OIE has a YouTube channel that houses all these wonderful training sessions for you. And we also have a webpage that keeps current technical assistance events that you can click anytime. So if you weren't happy with what's on Netflix, just head over to YouTube and you'll find some very good entertainment there, right? With our recorded sessions. But right now, we're just going to share a couple of highlights about what you can expect regarding some of the reporting requirements. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, so your first annual performance report will be due April 28th, 2023. That's pretty much what, 6 months-ish around of getting started and collecting information, and you will be submitting this through G5, and we'll get into much more of those details later, not necessarily today. But that's the due date, so put that on your calendar. Remember that the APR requirement, it applies to all grantees. The reports are typically due in the spring, as is the end of April. And like I said, we will have a host of lots of webinars specifically to preparing and submitting these reports for all of our NAL grantees. APRs are they're the primary avenue through which Ed and Congress get information about the progress you're making towards the project measures and objective of your grant. When you complete your APRs, you'll need to include data from the specific performance period. So you'll make sure that you have access to the most up-to-date information as possible. There is a bunch of different pieces to an APR, cover sheet that is signed by your authorized representative. So make sure on that GAN, you see who that is. If you're not sure, the executive summary, we have a portion of section A, which is the performance measures, GEPRA, which we'll talk about in just a second, and project objectives. You have a budget component that will show your current expenditures and maybe potentially if you have some carryover that you may be looking at. And then our section C, which is additional information for which you will be providing a reporting tool just for that. Next slide. So GEPRA stands for the Government Performance Reporting Act. Two types of measures that you will be reporting on every APR for us. The first one is the GEPRA, which is defined by Ed in education in the NIA, or the Notice Inviting Applications. And they do not change. These will always be forever and required every year that you report. as will be your performance measures. As Sarah mentioned, you're going to be reporting on those measures that you presented in your application. And that's how the peer reviewers reviewed it and scored it. And so that's how we'll be determining what substantial progress you'll be making towards those goals and objectives. Yes, next slide. That's you already there. You're ahead of me. With our GEPRA measures, we have 4, which is it's very doable. And it's very, very important that you know what your GEPRA measures are. You can find it again right here when you get the link. So you print out this pretty graphic and post it someplace where you can read. But it's basically broken down into 4 measures. You're looking at the number and percentage of participating students who attain proficiency in a native language through pre and post session assessments. Number 2, the number and percentage of participating students who make progress in learning a native language through pre and post assessments of their native language proficiency. And number 3, the number percent of participating students who show an improvement in academic outcomes as a result of this grant, and then the difference between the average daily attendance and participating students. So you're looking at attendance rates when it's all said and done. And the reporting period that you'll be reporting on is actually from October 1 to March 30th that Sarah put into the chat box. And again, we'll be diving into these a little bit more in depth, but it is important to know what these GEPRA measures are. Next. Of course, now we have GEPRA, and then the other one is your project objectives. And if you don't know what they are, you better check that out, because that's pretty important, especially if you're new. You defined your project measures with these objectives. They should be in your proposal or logic model if that's what you that's what you submitted with your application. Your project measures should match those primary grant components and outcomes defined in the approved proposal. And you will be reporting on all unique project that we call them project measures or objectives every year of the grant. You develop the wording for these objectives based on what was written in your approved project. So this is coming from you telling us this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And it's important that you are very well aware of the GEPRA and these project objectives, and being prepared to what you need to report on right from the beginning. And I'll hit on that in just a second. Next slide. As like this one. Here are some tips that we've learned to help make your reporting life a little easier, we hope. Make a plan for data collection and analysis now. Review the approved application and identify, highlight, define, collect the baseline data as soon as possible. Don't wait until reporting season, because the first year of the grant, you're doing a lot right now. You're trying to make sure your grant is getting off the ground and you're hiring for personnel. So there's a lot that's going on, but please don't put your data collection on the back seat, because you're going to find it very difficult to have to make that up toward when it comes time to report your information. So keep this
Anna,
ongoing.
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So we use the Stanford FLOSUM with our Dakota language. We have a script for it. And we're getting ready to do the pre-test right now. We
Perfect.
Generally don't do the post-test until May. Does this mean that we should probably be post-testing before March 30th? No. Okay,
No,
good.
that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So while your reporting period is from October 1 to March 30th, we do give you a chance to provide what we call APR updates. And so a lot of times, for example, some of our programs happen in the summer, right? So as you see, those timeframes don't include the summer. So we give people, the grantees, time to gather those things that couldn't happen during that period and provide us updates. And when you get into it, when you see the actual reporting, which we're not going to get really into now today, but you'll see how to report it out and be able to do that it'll be very clear. But no, don't change anything necessarily for this grant. The fact that you're doing your pre-test now is perfect, perfect timing. But keep your schedule as is, and then you'll just be providing updates, kind of like you'll be putting kind of a hold in that area in the data section of your APR, and then you'll fill it in later. So that's a great question. Discuss your report due date with your authorized representatives to ensure that you don't have any trouble securing their signature. It is a requirement. We cannot accept the APR is being submitted without a signed cover sheet. And I know sometimes this is getting towards spring breakish when we have these due. So make sure that you are sharing these due dates with everybody who is involved, so everyone's on the same page. And set up a budget tracking and communication process to ensure complete and current information for reporting, whatever it is. And we have some of those tools to help with budget tracking. Synergy and our TA team has done a wonderful job putting that together. Sarah's a guru on the budget tracking and has a wonderful document that's optional for you to use, but very, very helpful. And we'll be sharing those with you in the future. And finally, grant reporting in G5. So all the APRs are submitted through the online portal in your BFF G5. Know that it will be changing to G6 sometime soon. I don't know when, but they are working on that in the background, hopefully making it a little bit more user-friendly. We all hope. But Sarah's going to talk a little bit more about the G5 portion. Sarah?
Now you notice I keep getting to do all the G5 portions, and it's because G5 can be a scotch persnickety, is my nice way of putting it. So as Donna alluded to, it's not always the most user-friendly, but it is what we have. And so we try to put in place some helps to at least make it as user-friendly as possible. So G5 is what you'll use not only to pull down that GAN, but also to do your annual performance reporting. Now, important to note as we're getting started that just like your GAN can only be accessed by your project director, your reporting can only be done by your project director. Now, I say that, but we will give you lots of tools and tips on how you can involve your whole team in reporting, because we do not encourage just the project director taking on that entire task alone. However, the project director is the only one who can log into G5 and actually input the data into G5. So just to kind of clarify that piece. Once you log into G5, you'll notice that your username is your email address. You get to pick your own password, of course, with many rules, and it does require two-factor authentication. So this is going to require you either download a certain application onto a smartphone, or you get a text message and they put the code in, or you get a call and they tell you a code. I know that can be a real pain. I used to have one grantee that because of the reception in the building, because they were in a rural area, they would literally have to run to the parking lot to be able to get the code and then run back in before the application timed out, because there is a time period for how long your code is good. And so he was getting lots of cardio running back and forth, just trying to stay logged into G5. So this could also be your new workout plan, just options. The other real big tip in G5 is always use the buttons for back and forward that are actually in G5, not in your internet browser. Because if you use the ones in your internet browser, it angers G5 and then it kicks you out. So then you have to do that whole two-factor authentication again. There's the running. You don't want to do that. So make sure that you're using the menu buttons that are within G5 to keep that working well for you. Now, one thing we do encourage is, if possible, for the project director to get what's called G5 view-only access. So as we talked about earlier, the project director is not the one doing drawdowns. You don't have access to the actual money. And we want to keep it that way, of course, but it can be helpful for you to at least be able to see the money part, for you to be able to see when drawdowns happen and for how much. And that's what this gives you. It gives you the ability to go into G5 and just see the budgetary information, but not touch or change anything. So this is a little 2-page form. Olani has conveniently popped it over in the chat for you that you can complete and send in. I suggest calling the G5 help desk to submit it. That typically is the fastest way to get this done. Often they'll then have you scan and email it, and they'll be on the lookout, and they just process it a little bit faster. But once they process it, then you'll be able to, when you log into G5, see all of the drawdowns and fiscal information, but again, not change anything. And that's often key because you do have to get your authorized representative to sign this. And the biggest hiccup we hear is people saying, no, we don't want you to have access to the money. What if you accidentally mess something up or draw down money? View only access won't let you do that. You won't have any of the buttons necessary. It merely lets you view it, which can be really helpful as you're tracking your budget. And because while there are other people who typically do your drawdowns, bottom line, you as the project director are responsible for this grant. You're responsible for this money. You're responsible for knowing that drawdowns are happening, when they're happening, for how much. And so this can really help you keep on top of that, because when OIE sees that maybe that's not happening the way it should, they're not going to go to your budget office. They're going to go to you. And so you want to make sure that you're really knowing all of that info at all times. That takes us to grant fiscal management. Now, like I said, we're going to really delve into your budget next week during the budget workshop, but we did want to give you a little off the top information, such as on contracting for services. Many of you have things in your budget where you're going to be contracting with others. Just remember that you do have to make those procurements in a manner that provides for full and open competition. So like going out for bids and following uniform grant guidance. Typically, if you're following the budgetary procedures of your organization, your school district, or your tribe, that's already going to be following those policies. Also, really, really important is this third bullet, and I want to make sure to draw your attention to that. When you were awarded this grant, it was awarded to you for your whole project and everything that you described in there, but not to specific entities or individuals that you might have identified. So for instance, if you said John is going to be your evaluator, and now you have actually found that that is not the best fit as your evaluator and you want to go with Sylvia, that's fine. You were approved to spend X amount of dollars on evaluation, not on John. Okay. Or if you said that you were going to go with a certain company or a certain university, you were awarded for those activities, not for those individuals or organizations. So don't ever feel like you're tied to those if those are no longer the best fit for you and your project. Okay. You were awarded for those activities, not the entities. All right. And if you need more information, again, we're just going to throw you back to uniform guidance all the time. That's going to be your best resource, as well as if you can't find it there or it's not clear, always feel free to reach out and ask, Donna and Gabby or us at the OIETA team. That's what we're here for, is to help you kind of decode all of that, and better to ask and get feedback than make a budgetary whoopsie. All right. And I'm looking at the comment in the chat. And Dara, that's going to be slightly different just because that wasn't a contractor, that was a partner. And not to say that you can't change that if necessary, but that's definitely something that you would need to reach out to Donna and explain, like, here's the change we want to make, here's why, and how it's still completely in alignment with our project. But that's the only kind of difference there, is because that's more of a partnership than a specific contractor. Just make sure that you're reaching out to Donna on that one.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, I forgot that last bullet. And to the greatest extent feasible, remember that you are asked to give Indian preference for training and employment in connection with the administration of this grant. So that's just an Indian preference. Most of you in your hiring policies will likely already have that in place, but if not, just remember that that is applicable to this particular grant project. And then we do have some resources here for learning more about indirect cost rates. There are so many different types of indirect cost rates and lots of different details to each of them. We've got all these resources that are really, really helpful, but then I think the most helpful resource is our actual indirect cost division, where you can reach out to them, ask them questions, get feedback, have them help walk you through maybe if you need to get an expired rate fixed up, or if you're not sure if you can keep using de minimis, any of those things. They are the experts. They are able to answer these things really, really quickly and really, really well. So you can reach out via email or phone. Andre Hilton is their director, and they will get you squared away. All right, now we're going to hop over to communications and technical assistance with Donna.
Great, thank you so much. We're in the home stretch of your webinar and want to reiterate just a few notes about some of the ongoing communications and put some upcoming technical assistance events on your calendar. Next slide. So just to talk a little bit about the communications, only as Sarah alluded to, and I think some of you, I don't know, I think Dara, you may not have been here for this. So this is good that we kind of are reiterating some of these points. Only the project director and authorized representative are the ones that we can communicate with. It's frustrating sometimes if you are out or something like that, but there has to be that communication link just with us here in OIE to you as project director. Please make sure that you keep OIE informed of changes. Revolving doors sometimes happens. I mean, we have those issues where we have people leave unexpectedly. It happens. We just need you to be sure to keep us up to date so we can keep that line of communication open. We do send out lots of different notices. It could be something we need you to attend, or it just could be informative, or a new resource, or something like that. But whenever you have a change in project director or contracting officer, budget revisions and requests and changes to activities and programmatic or fiscal details, let us know that, okay? You have my email, you have Gabby's email, and we will do our best to answer any questions that you may come up. And if we can't always be there, since we do wear multiple hats, our technical assistants here with Sarah and her team are here at this email, oie@seiservices.com. And if you want to add your program staff to our wonderful distribution list, please email the OIE@SEI Services address with your grantee name, any of the staff names, the roles, and their emails. And then we'll get you added to all of our listservs that go out to the grantees. And let's see, anything else? I think that's it. Yeah, next slide. Communications. Whenever you're emailing your program officer at OIE, be sure to include 4 key bits of information, and this will help ensure a timely and accurate answer. Again, your grant program, in this case, it's NAL and ED. I do get quite a few emails, and sometimes I don't know which program it is. And especially if you have multiple grants, we really need that PR number, that long number starting with S415B22 in your instance that you can find on your GAN. A brief topic indicating what the email is about, in the name of your organization, in the body of your email. All this information, it really helps us to know who we're communicating with and provides a level of safety and security, and helps give context that we can get back to you as soon as possible. And I do ask you, if you've asked me something and you haven't, and I think Dara can attest to this, if you've ever asked me that you needed something and I haven't gotten back to you, please ping me. Don't feel like, oh, I'm bothering. I welcome it. And so that's why I'm having you CC Gabby as well, because she will help me keep me honest. If she can't answer it, then if we'll get something to you, but please I have no problem with you saying, hey, Donna, can you tell me where this is at? And that will put you back on the top of my email list, and then I'll be happy to help you out. Next slide. And a new event that's happening for you, just for you guys. We'll do a complete budget revision workshop. So you often write your grant, you write the budget, and things happen, ideas come up and so forth. We have a special webinar that will take you through the ins and outs of how to keep track of this budget, the budget tracker. If you have some changes that you want to make, you're allowed to move some things around under a certain amount, a percentage of your grant, and we'll get into more of that later at the next week on the 25th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we do invite, please invite people, your fiscal people, to attend with you. I think that would be very, very helpful. And we'll give you the details and the tools to support you and make sure you're successful with submitting any kind of budget revisions that you have to share. And I don't know if any of you have ever attended our annual project directors meetings in the last couple of years, but we've been virtual, of course, because of the pandemic, and it's really turned out to be just fabulous. I mean, it's almost, I look at it as a kind of a mini conference, the way this is all put together, and the keynote speakers we have, and the gamification within the platform. And it's just a wonderful experience. It really is. And the presentations that we have for all of our project directors, it's open to everybody. All project directors are required, and I'm going to underline required, to attend. It used to be, if you've had a grant with us before, that you were required to come to DC. And that may be the case in next year, the year after. We don't know that. But for this fiscal year, it will be 100% virtual. Grantee should have set aside funds for 2 people to travel to the event. Obviously, if it's virtual, you won't have those costs. So that would be kind of one of those budget revisions that you'll maybe want to make if you didn't include that, or if you did include that as actual travel to DC for the project directors. It is virtual, so you'll probably have to reallocate those funds. And it's been the PD, virtual PD meeting, it's been very well received. And like I said, we'll let you know the format of future years as we get closer and see how things are going. But more information will be shared as plans and decisions are made to that. So it's just hang tight and stay tuned for that. But it's an exciting time and an exciting event. And I am so excited to share this. So save the date. This is a first, you will be the very first attendees and graduates of our Grant Leadership Academy. We are offering for brand new grantees. This is a chance to dive deep into those questions that we haven't answered yet, or maybe we have, you just don't get it yet, or you're having issues come up that you weren't planning on. And instead of going through and setting aside a meeting, you will be coming to DC. So maybe some of those funds, if you had it set aside for the PD, since it's virtual, you can apply to this as a new grantee. But we will take you down, and we're still kind of doing some fine tuning with the planning, but you will be here at the DC, the Department of Education, and you'll get to see us live. And we get to meet you live, which will be exciting. But we will have a whole day. It's going to be one day this year. We're hoping in the future years, it'll be at least 2 days, maybe no more than 2 days. But this year, we think it's very important that you have these resources, and it gives you a chance to maybe, like I said, dig down deep into some of these topics that you're struggling with, or anything you need. So please put that on that date on your calendar as a hold for the in-person Grant Leadership Academy. And is it just for project directors? Yes, just project directors. Sorry. but you can bring others to the virtual one when we have that. But yeah, this is just going to be for the project directors, and you know, we'll take care of you, and it'll be exciting. Looking forward to seeing everybody. And if there's some things actually that you would like to go over as you kind of start getting into your grant, and you would like us to kind of take a little deeper dive, please let us know, and we'll be happy to try to put that onto our agenda. Next slide goes to Sarah.
So we are going to start wrapping things up. I do want to let you know we will provide a little bit more information about the Grant Leadership Academy at your talking circle next week and your budget workshop, so that you can start planning travel and all of those things that I know you need to get in order, because as crazy as it seems, December is around the corner. So we will get all of that to you so you can start your planning as well. Now, a few reminders as we wrap up. Remember, like we've talked about in a couple of spots throughout today, check that GAN, download it, look it over, see your terms, your conditions, any attachments, anything that you need to follow up on, as well as just verifying the accuracy of everything. When in doubt, if you have questions, concerns, things you're confused by, don't worry about reaching out. I know sometimes there's a concern of, is it something I'm already supposed to know? You know, will it look bad if I ask questions? Absolutely not. We would so rather you ask questions than feel frustrated or confused. So please always feel free to reach out with those questions that you have. Donna and Gabby with OIE are always there for you, as well as those of us on the TA team. So you have lots of folks ready and willing to help you. And then final reminder is just that we all have to be responsible stewards of these taxpayer dollars that have been dedicated to these projects. And so remember, as we go through, particularly a lot of the budget information next week, that, you know, while it may seem a lot at first, one, it will get easier. And two, it's because ultimately we want to make sure that these monies are going to the kids to provide the best programs possible. So I do want to pause and give you the opportunity that if you have any questions that we haven't talked about today, or about the things we've talked about today, we are happy to answer any of those. You're welcome to come off mute and ask, or pop it in the chat, whatever you prefer. And as while we're taking those questions, I'm also, in the interest of time, going to pop up our end of event poll so that you can take that at your leisure. So I'll set that off to the side. And any questions? I know if you're like me, you'll get off the webinar, you'll go get more water, and then you'll immediately have a question. So feel free, you can always just reach out after the event as well. And we'll be together a couple of times next week. So that's a perfect segue into some upcoming events. Tuesday, you have your budget revision workshop from 3 to 4:30 Eastern. So basically the same time frame that we had today. And then on Monday, you have your first talking circle. Now you see, I'm all excited. You may be thinking, what in the world is a talking circle? So we get together somewhat every other month. You'll get calendar invites after this. I didn't want to send you calendar invites for things that you didn't know what they were prior to this. So the talking circle one I'll send out immediately after this. And you're invited to the talking circle. We highly encourage participation in the talking circles. This is your opportunity to know firsthand the important information that OIE has to share with you, directions from OIE, to be able to network and brainstorm with your peers, to be able to receive technical assistance and resources. We cover everything you need to be successful with your project in these talking circles. So your first one will be this coming Monday, again from 3 to 4:30 Eastern. And you'll be able to also at that talking circle meet the other cohort that is already 2 years into their project. And I think that will be a really nice opportunity for you as well, to be able to meet some of your peers that can help you along the way as you're just getting started with your project. Then we also have our monthly office hours. Now, this is something that we do every single month. It's always the fourth Thursday of the month, unless the fourth Thursday happens to be a holiday or something like that, and then we'll push to the third. But typically, it's always the fourth Thursday. It's from 1 to 2 Eastern, and it's an optional come and go event. So it's not required to participate, but everybody's invited. And the neat thing about office hours is that it's open to all the discretionary grantees. So it's not just the NAL group that's there, it's also the PD grantees and the NYCP grantees and the STEP grantees, all the discretionary grantees. And it's an opportunity for you to pop in at any point. So if you're not able to join right at 1, pop in at 1:30. You can pop in at any point within that hour and ask any questions that you have going on. And it can be questions that you want the program officers or the TA team to help you answer. Or it could be, I have this dilemma and I really want to brainstorm with a group of peers. And so you can pop a question out to all the peers that are on the call. Just a great time to be able to work, think, mull things over, as well as we have a number of people who will just join and listen in, because you may not have a question off the top of your head, but someone else may ask a question that you think, ooh, that was good information, or actually, I do wonder that. So we'll also have folks who just like to join and listen in each month. So you're always welcome to join those when they work with your schedule. I will say this is the only event that we do each month that we do not record and post. So all of your other events, we do record and post on the YouTube channel. But with the office hours, we really want that to be a very casual, a very close-knit, comfortable community conversation. And so we don't record those. So just know that those are the only ones that you do have to be present to get the information. But other than that, we post them all. And then just as we wrap up today, I want to make sure again that you do have all of the contact information. I'm going to pop Gabby's email back in because we don't have hers up on the slide yet. But before I send this slide deck out to you, I will add that onto this final slide so that you have it in your written records. And this way you have Donna's email address, you have the email address for the TA team. If you are on Twitter, the Office of Indian Ed actually has a Twitter that was just started about a year and a half ago-ish. And we are very, very active on Twitter, posting often multiple times a day. And we don't just post things about OIE, we post great resources, other events going on through other organizations, just a multitude of really cool things. I think I may be a little biased. So if you happen to be on Twitter, we encourage you to follow us at OIE Indian Ed. And then I know we're right toward the end of time, but we do have just a couple of minutes left. If you need to hop to another meeting, we understand, and we'll see you Monday for the talking circle. But if you have any questions and want to stay on, we're happy to stay on for a few minutes with you and answer any questions you might have. But otherwise, welcome to the OIE and specifically NAL at ED family.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. We look forward to seeing some great things.